welcome back to A Better World. This is your host, Mitchell J. Rabin, and I'm very glad you're joining us again today. Today we're going to have another very interesting show. We have with us the author of this book, Walking Through Walls, Philip Smith. This is a really interesting, and I may say very, very funny book about Philip's life as a child, primarily, and a teenager growing up in a very unusual home for the United States of America, and even more unusual for Miami in the 50s. Philip himself is an artist of some renown with art exhibits in a number of different museums in New York and elsewhere. He also worked for GQ for many years as the managing editor.
Correct.
Managing editor, and has really a distinguished professional life on his own. And during the last number of years, reflecting on his own family of origin, he decided to pay homage to his father and mother, but especially his father, who was nothing short of an exceptional human being. And in fact, it probably would be best understood as he is another type of Edgar Cayce. And you don't run across that very often. Yet, in fact, in Philip's own home, he did. And so today's show is going to be exploring, you could say, the nuances of what it was like to be growing up in that family and the kind of gifts that his father has left us all, a legacy that to this day are of great value, and we'll be looking at all of that. So Philip, great to have you on the show.
I'm delighted, Mitch. Always a pleasure to speak with you.
Good. Now, we had you on the radio show, A Better World Radio,
Right.
just a few short weeks ago, which was a complete delight.
Thank you.
I
I had a great time.
So much fun. Yeah, me too. Me too. Because you have articulated your own family's experience, your experience in the family, so hilariously and yet touchingly. And first of all, just tell a little bit about what it was like to grow up in a family where your father went from being an interior designer among the elite of Miami and the Caribbean, including Cuba back then, to a hippie and a healer of actually very high renown.
Yeah, my father, we actually had you can't have a normal childhood with a father as an interior decorator, but
In the first place.
yes,
Right.
but we did have a sort of normal life. My parents were sort of jet setters in the early days, and my father was always interested in philosophy. I actually found, when I was writing the book, I found a diary from 1925, and he was 21 at the time, and he was listing all the books he was reading, and they were on Buddhism, Hinduism, Christian Science, and these are books that there was no Barnes & Noble. He had to get from
Esoteric sources.
yeah, in London, or we'd write away from them. He'd wait months for them. But then in the 60s, suddenly one day he discovered he could talk to dead people and he could heal people. And it wasn't just laying on of hands. He started being able to actually diagnose people accurately, the size of the tumor, or when they got breast cancer, why they got breast cancer. And it became this obsession that took over my father and our family, and it really was extraordinary, because back in the 60s, it's not like there was no understanding of this in society. So I had a very schizophrenic childhood where I would be home watching these miracles, and then I'd go to school and I couldn't say anything. I mean, I didn't say what my father did, or I never invited friends over to the house.
Like it could have been that the girl, Sally, sitting next to you, her mother had, God forbid, lung cancer, and you probably may have felt like you had an answer, your father, who could go, well, yeah, that's nothing. It's like, a headache. And you couldn't say anything because of the stigma.
Well, the stigma, and also there was a real concern that he would get arrested for practicing medicine without a license. The FDA came after him. And even on my mother's side, the relatives there were highly skeptical. But when my grandmother got sick,
Your mother's mother?
my mother's mother, and the doctors basically said that she had kidney cancer and that they were going to operate, but they didn't think she could live. I went to my father. And
That doesn't usually stop them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and this is a time before CAT scans and MRI, so they couldn't really accurately diagnose, or PET scans. But my father said,
The next thing you have to have is a dog scan. They've
yes,
got a cat scan, they've got a pet scan, but now they need a dog scan.
dog scan, that was coming.